Pete told me it was a long walk, and he wasn't kidding. Thank you for waiting patiently. Thanks, everyone, for being here today and on the live stream. I'm Mashable's business editor, and I'm thrilled to kick off this incredible day with Katie Harbath. She is Global Lead for Politics and Government Engagement at Facebook. We have a lot to get through, so I want to jump right in. But first, I want to remind you to tweet us your questions with the hashtag #DigitalBeltway, and they will show up on this very handy iPad. So they will not go ignored. So do tweet those. So I want to jump right in. So one of the things that strikes me is that it's really great you're in DC, because how often do you have to travel for your job?
Yeah, it's pretty rare that I'm here in DC. I'm usually on the road about 3 weeks out of every month, if not more. So I've been spending a lot of time abroad working with our team. I'm here for 3 days, see my cat, make sure my house hasn't burned down, and then back on the road again.
It's very appropriate to have cats and work in social media, so that's
exactly.
a great start. So last week you said you were in India, right?
Yeah, I was in India. So we did a lot of work last year for their election, working with Prime Minister Modi's team, with the Aam Aadmi Party, with the Congress Party. And what we like to do, too, is we want to make sure they're using Facebook not just for their elections, but really also in terms of governing. And Prime Minister Modi has really been at the forefront of using social media to break news, to crowdsource opinions. And so we were meeting with their team to kind of talk about some of the newest best practices on Facebook and different content ideas for their page.
So what kind of ideas did you give them?
We talked a lot about, and these are the sort of the best practices we give everyone, but thinking about how to share some of those behind-the-scenes pictures, the perspectives that other people might not see. I always give the example of, if he's giving a speech, don't share a picture of him up on stage. Try to get behind him and take a picture of the crowd, because that's a perspective that most people wouldn't otherwise get. We were also talking about, how do you look at his schedule and how can you make sure you're in different places to get some of that imagery, or also shooting video. And one thing that was interesting that happened on Saturday is he was doing an event where he was announcing a Social Security initiative. And he was with some school kids, and they were videotaping it, and this little kid started tapping on the chair, and the Prime Minister sat down, started tapping on the chair with them. It was a great moment. You couldn't have scripted it. They got it on video. They got it up on his Facebook page, and it's got over 1 million views now, and a lot of engagement for them, and they're really happy with it.
Right, and that kind of sort of very human look at candidates is something that in the US, we know that our presidential candidates are always looking for. Yeah. That 2016 election is just kicking off. How is this election going to be different from previous elections?
I think there's going to be a lot of ways that it's going to be different. And to be honest, I think we don't even know yet what the innovative technology is yet that the campaigns will do. At the beginning of the 2012 election, Facebook didn't even have mobile advertising. And by the end of 2012, mobile ads were the main way that most people were consuming information off of Facebook. And mobile, we became a mobile-first company in 2012. And so, now video is something that you're seeing a lot, especially with the announcements. Hillary Clinton announcing on Facebook with a Facebook video. All of the candidates are sort of using this medium. Video is a very recent thing on Facebook, and something that people are starting to figure out. How is video on Facebook different than video you might put on YouTube or video that you might be putting up on television? And so I think that's something that we'll see very new as well about 2016. The other thing, too, is I think this is going to be the first election where you're going to see some candidates that they're playing a more active role in the content on their page. I know Scott Walker, he shares a lot of images where he takes them himself, whether it's on both Facebook or Instagram. A lot of these candidates are ones that have grown up using social media themselves, and I think that's going to give you an even more personal look into the campaign, because it's not going to be all staff-driven.
So what have you found works best, especially in the case of video? I mean, what do you advise candidates or anybody else who's kind of politically oriented to do? Does it have to be a certain length, a certain kind?
So there's never a silver bullet where I need to be like, it needs to be 8.25 seconds and, taken with this particular type of camera, with this particular type of background. But what we do find is shorter is better. I find, on average, you're probably getting about 15 to 30 seconds that people are watching. Because remember, most of them are doing it on their phones. The other type of video that we see working really well is one that's just taken with the phone. Doesn't have to be highly produced, but it's one where you can do direct to camera. and explain what it is that you're doing, why you believe in a certain initiative, why you introduce a certain policy. We saw this a lot in the UK elections. David Cameron did a lot of direct-to-camera video on the phone as he was campaigning across the UK, and we saw that worked out very well for him.
Surprisingly well,
yes.
actually.
And we saw, it was interesting when you looked at the Facebook data. David Cameron had 9.1 million interactions. And an interaction is a like, comment, share, or post about him, which was about 5 million more interactions than the next closest leader was being talked about on Facebook. And so that was something, his team put a lot of effort into Facebook during the entire election. And it was a place a lot of people were getting a lot of their news and information.
It's getting to the point where almost every candidate, not just in the US, but all across the world, has a social media team to manage all of that. What are they best at doing right now, and what do they not do that they should be doing more of?
You mean for the candidates and their teams? I think that right now, what they're doing really well is sort of getting that video, starting to keep things updated. It's no longer a question now if people are going to have a Facebook page. It's the type of content, are you putting up engaging content? So I think what a lot of the teams are still trying to figure out is how do you engage at a presidential level with a lot of people where you have one-to-many. So how do you engage with them? We have a tool called Q&A. We've had a lot of different world leaders and a lot of different elected officials use this, where they'll put up a post on their Facebook page, say, hey, I've got 30 minutes to an hour to answer your questions. People leave them in the comment section and they can reply right there. Politicians love this because they're able to answer a lot of questions at scale. So I think that's something that they're doing really well, but still trying to figure out how do you do that on a more regular basis, and then also gain insight from the questions that people are asking.
Right, exactly, because sometimes people ask really hard questions, or
Yes.
there are people who are coming out in opposition of somebody's point of view. How do they handle that? How do they handle the opposition or anger?
The ones who do it best actually answer their question. Say, make sure the person feels listened to and provides their own viewpoint. And I find that if you can do that in a respectful fashion and the person asking the question is respectful, they can at least appreciate the fact that somebody answered their question and they were willing to take that hard one. I don't recommend that people feed the trolls, so the people that are just being really mean and they really have no purpose. But you can't just sit there and answer all the softball questions. You need to answer questions just as you would if you were at an in-person town hall meeting.
Right. It's a general rule on social media.
Yeah.
You can't hide who you are for very long,
Exactly.
right? And that's very useful for politics. So you joined Facebook in 2012. Right?
Yes, 2011 actually.
Okay, and so you've seen several elections. What lessons have you learned from seeing the 2012 election here in the US, the 2014 election, and then the foreign elections? What's sort of the best practices that you've seen?
So the biggest thing I would say is stay flexible. Stay curious. What works on social media changes constantly. How people want to engage, the type of content that works. There's never going to be a point where all of a sudden we're going to say, oh, I've got social media. I've got that magic formula that means that I can just keep doing these same types of posts over and over again and I'm going to be great. And so I think the biggest thing people need to learn is that while you can do some long-term planning, you need to be able to be flexible and nimble in terms of what it is that you're doing. And then I would also say, too, I think people are getting more used to failure. So it's okay that if you put a post up on Facebook and it doesn't work, because you learn from that. You learn that that's the type of content that you maybe shouldn't be putting up, and you can keep reiterating on that. Nobody's going to be perfect the first time that they put something up. And I think, it's something that, the tech sector talks about a lot, is being able to learn from failures. We have a saying sometimes about fail harder or fail faster, because that means you get to learn more faster. And I think some of the campaigns trying to learn how to do that, but also knowing that it's a unique thing where there's an election day, and after that election day, somebody goes home and somebody's a winner.
Is there an example of a failure like that that you think was very constructive, that you see or that you talk about with the candidates?
I don't have a specific one. I think most of it goes back to the content.
Yeah.
So playing around with the different types of videos that might work, the different types of photos. Because the other thing, too, is that what works for one page's fans might not work for another. And so the trick is really paying attention to your own fans and how they're engaging. And you can take best practices from others, but don't think that just because something works for one page that it's going to automatically work for yours.
So there's no point in Marco Rubio copying whatever Hillary Clinton is doing.
No, I don't think so. You know, he did I really liked the video that he did where he was answering like the Google questions about him. I think it shows that, you know, he also did this too with the water bottle. Like, he had a really good answer to that because he owned it. He was able to laugh at himself a little bit, and it helped the story to keep moving on. And so I think those are going to be the types of things that are going to help these guys have a really good social media strategy that really amplifies what they're doing for their overall campaign plan.
So what are the newest trends that candidates are using, not just here in the US, but all over the world, that have really stood out to you or that have impressed you?
Well, one thing that we're seeing a lot in the US, and we saw this a lot in the UK too, is really using our targeting ability to make sure you're reaching the voters that you need to reach. And thinking through, okay, who are my hardcore supporters that I need to turn into donors or volunteers? Who are the persuadable voters who I need to probably send a different message to? But then also, I'm probably going to send a different message to somebody who's 24 than I am somebody who's 65. And so thinking through how can we effectively target all those people to make sure they're getting the message they need, and also in a cost-effective way. And I think we saw this used to great success not only in the UK, but the 2014 US election. So you look at Ed Gillespie's race in Virginia against Mark Warner. It was something that nobody thought Ed would get even close to winning. I used to work with him when he was RNC chairman, and he, from the beginning, wanted to use Facebook. And they used Facebook from the get-go around to engage with voters, to get new people into the fold, and to use it for messaging. Senator Warner used Facebook as well, but started a little bit later than Ed did. And given how close that race was, I think it was, what, 737 votes or something like that, Ed attributes a lot of that for how close it was to his use of Facebook.
That's amazing. And so then for the constituents as well, how do they engage? As you know, as journalists, we're always looking for that Facebook engagement. How does it work in politics?
I think it's a couple of different ways. You're going to have fans who are going to want, who are your big supporters, who are going to want to be sharing your content. They're going to want to be answering questions. They'll be having their own discussions on the page as well. And then you're going to have voters who maybe haven't made up their mind yet. And so they're going to want to know more about the policy positions that these candidates have. And this is something that I think a lot of campaigns, again, are still trying to figure out. How can a candidate be doing everything they need to do on the campaign trail, but also find time to engage with that fan base on Facebook? We've got a great tool called Mentions that a lot of candidates use because they can do it on their phone. So they can sort of see what public posts are being talked about on them. They can see their own page. And what I'm hoping to see is that we find a way that they take time out of their day that they want to actually engage with fan base in addition to whatever they're doing on the campaign trail.
What would be the ideal amount of time to be able to do that?
I mean, I think, you know, I used to work for Senator John Cornyn when I was at the senatorial committee, and he likes to do his Facebook himself. And, you know, we'd always wake up in the morning to go look and see what news articles he had posted to his Facebook page, because he'd wake up in the morning and be reading articles and kind of sharing his thoughts. And then, you know, he might check it, you know, around lunchtime. You know, you just check it throughout the day whenever he had the opportunity. I think that's the best practice. There's not it should be 15 minutes every day. It's just sort of, you got to think about it how you use Facebook as a regular person. I think that candidates who start to do the same thing, the Prime Minister of Singapore is one of my favorite people on Facebook. He does it all himself. He loves taking selfies. He takes all these pictures. He uses it like a normal person does. And it's a really popular page because people know that it's him. And they know that he's sharing his perspective, and it's not all staff driven. And I really want to see that move more into the States.
Yeah, that's, you know, I think that's tough. One of the things that we always talk about with the U.S. presidential elections is how very managed they've become, and how, you know, sort of the loose cannon problem, right? You don't, I could imagine a lot of staffers would be a little bit scared of their bosses, you know, Facebooking freely. So how do you talk them through that concern?
So I think the big thing is that people can get in trouble no matter what. All of a sudden being on Facebook does not all of a sudden make people say stupid things. That happens no matter what. And I think the big thing is constantly reminding the candidates that no matter where they are, whether they're in public or if they're on Facebook, it's the same thing. And so you really need to think through what it is that you're going to post, because all of that could be public, all of that could be recorded and put up somewhere. You know, some candidates, if they want to ease into it, what I recommend is have the candidates send to the staff the things that they'd like to post, if they'd like a quick gut check, but don't have the staff rewrite it. Don't clean it up, just gut check it, make sure it's okay, maybe clean up some spelling and some grammatical error, you know, like commas and stuff like that, and then put it up, because you want it to be in that candidate's voice, and I think that's really important.
So you talked a little bit about Facebook video and how much bigger that's becoming, especially for candidates. Which of the candidates that you've seen is especially good at Facebook video? And as you think about that, I want to remind everyone, if you have questions, tweet them with the hashtag #DigitalBeltway, and I'll start taking them.
We'll start taking them?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think I mentioned Marco Rubio's Google one, which I thought was really great. Hillary's announcement one was good, and they're doing quite a few from the trail. I really like Sean Duffy is one, so he's obviously not running for president, but from my home state of Wisconsin. He does a lot of the videos where it's just the selfie video, where he's explaining what it is that he's doing, sharing, you know, whether he's at a parade or a town hall and stuff like that. It's all very authentic, and I think those are some of my favorites. One of my most interesting ones that I saw was actually out of Brazil. A member of Congress there, not U.S. Congressman, a member of the Brazil Congress. Something happened where he got locked out of a hearing room, kicked out or locked out. I can't remember. It was in Portuguese, which I don't speak, so he was just very angry. He started walking away, and I pity the poor staffer that had to walk backwards and record him as he was very angrily walking through the hall. But he recorded in real time and was breaking what was happening and why he was so upset about what happened. That video went crazy in Brazil. Because he was the one that was able to break the news. It was very emotional. It was a very raw video. It wasn't like very produced. And I think you're going to probably start to see more and more of that in terms of both the breaking of news on Facebook, because you can reach a lot more people, but also in terms of using video in which to do that.
Right. Emotion usually works very well.
Yeah.
Right, and that captured kind of really good emotion. So one question from Jessica Cooper in the audience is, she's interested in your best practices for continuing and maintaining engagement with the strongest supporters, the diehards.
Yeah, I think I really like the idea of crowdsourcing ideas. We don't do manifestos here in the States like they do in other countries where they have the party manifesto, but you do have certain policy initiatives that you're thinking about and you want to formulate. And I think finding ways to keep your supporters involved in that, letting them have input, at least being heard, is good, but then also give them stuff to do. You want them to be sharing your content with their friends. You want them to be talking to their friends offline, getting people to volunteer, getting people to donate. So finding those different ways that you can plot out, that you can be keeping them engaged and even give them a little bit of homework or something that you really need them to do, I think is important and will pay off when election time comes.
And is there any data that you can provide to candidates that shows them, the engagement or how they're kind of moving through social networks?
Yeah, they can see that all through their, a lot of them, so you can use the Facebook page insights to certainly see how those different posts are doing, et cetera. And then a lot of them too, some of them might move them to their website where maybe you have a volunteer portal or something, and you use our Facebook login so that people can log into that through their Facebook page, be sharing things with friends that way as well, and then also being able to match that with your own data that you might have to be making sure you're getting the right messages to the right people.
And there are, one of the things that I think probably a connected audience like this deals with a lot is that there are a lot of social networks. And so what do you tell people about sort of the use of Facebook compared to other social networks?
Yeah, we all have, all the different social networks, they all have their different strengths. I'm not gonna sit here and say don't be on Twitter, don't be on YouTube, because that would be crazy. All of us, if you think about YouTube, especially with video, when somebody goes to YouTube, they know what video they're going to look for in general. But Facebook's much more of a discovery place. It's where you're going to find the video that you wouldn't have thought to go search for on YouTube. Twitter's a bit more real time. You can do 25 posts in a row on Twitter, and that's totally okay. That wouldn't work on Facebook. And so the trick is thinking through, okay, when I have a live event or I want to be doing things, how do I utilize all these platforms to their utmost strengths? I usually say Facebook posts, they're going to last a bit longer. So if you're thinking about doing an event, you might first start with a picture behind the scenes, somebody doing some last minute prep with their speech. Nice picture. Then you might do a quick video clip while the speech is happening. Share that up. Then you might share a news article from this speech, or maybe link to a blog post or something on the website with more information. And then you followed it up with a Q&A. That way you've taken your fans through the entire experience and give them a chance to even ask questions of the person.
That's great. Any parting thoughts?
No.
So
Happy Friday. Have a good weekend.
So thank you all for being a great audience, and thank you, Katie, for this talk. It was great.
Absolutely. Thank you all.